to In the Zone. So much is going on in the world of sports, and we are here to cover it all. In the Zone starts now. Joining Bill Cullen and Dylan Shields, I'm Liam Crane. We will have our Super Bowl breakdown in a bit, but first there is so much happening in college basketball. With around a month left before Selection Sunday, Bill, do you see one of the top 5 teams going to the Final Four this year, or do you have an underdog pick?
Well, I do see one of the top 5 teams getting into the Final Four. I know everyone's going to go Purdue because they have the most dominant player right now in college basketball, but I'm leaning towards Arizona. Right now they've won 6 straight. They've done really well in a Pac-12 schedule. And I see them continuing that success throughout the end of February going into March.
For me, I also have a top 5 team. This time I'm going to go with Alabama. I think they got the best chance to make it. They've beaten some pretty good teams this year. They beat North Carolina back when they were ranked number 1. They also beat Houston. At Houston, they were also ranked number 1 at the time. And they've got some star players as well, like Brandon Miller, who's averaging 18 points per game. And I think overall, as good as Zach Edey is for Purdue, I just think Alabama overall is the best chance to get to the Final Four.
It's funny because when we talk about Alabama, it's football. It's football. It's Nick Saban, and it's Nick Saban's team. But now we're talking basketball. It does feel a little uncomfortable, but I think they do have a realistic chance. As far as Purdue goes, they could see the Final Four pretty easily, but I think the hype, like you're saying, we have to see if it's justified.
Exactly. Every year when you see the best player, the most dominant player in March Madness, when's the last time you see them win the title or even see them get to the Final Four? Even Zion, as great as he was in college, couldn't get there. So that's why I don't see it happening, but it could happen, absolutely, but just have to see.
That's a great take. And now the Big 12 is no different. Over half the conference is ranked in the top 25 this week, and 8 of the 10 teams in the conference are within 5 games of first place. The Big 12 has been wild, but who's going to be crowned Big 12 champions this year, Dylan?
I'm going to go with the bold pick here. There's a lot of teams like Texas and Kansas that everyone would probably expect to win it, but I'm going to go Kansas State here. I know they just lost to Texas on Saturday, but they also beat them earlier in the year at Texas. They beat Kansas at home. So I just think overall Kansas State has the best chance to win the Big 12 and make an underdog-like run. I think they got the best depth out of anyone in the Big 12. They got players like Keontae Johnson. He averages 18 points per game and 7 rebounds, and he also has about a 52% shooting rate, which is pretty good. So I just think overall Kansas State moves the ball very well, and I think that's going to favor a lot in the Big 12 tournament.
Interesting.
What I would say is, with Texas, they have been very impressive, especially what happened earlier in the year, let's be honest. But their last 4 games are against ranked opponents in that conference, and the Big 12 is no easy game, right? All ranked teams. When it comes to Iowa State, which is one of the top teams in the Big 12, they are undefeated at home. They have been incredible, but Iowa State has to go to Kansas State and Texas, and they're 2-5 on the road. Right. So I don't see that happening. My team is Kansas. They just won the championship last year. They have that pedigree. I like Kansas State. They do have a weaker schedule coming up, so I think that they'll do very well. But if I had to put my money into it, I'd pick Kansas. That's
interesting. Now, let's talk road games, because if we're looking at the Big Ten, Dylan, entering Tuesday, there's quite the logjam in the standings. Of course, Purdue is in first. Rutgers, of all the teams, is in second place, but then 6 teams are all tied for third with a 7-5 conference record. Rutgers has recently had an impressive win over Michigan State, and Indiana knocked off Purdue this past weekend. Your thoughts on the Big Ten?
You're right. It is a dogfight. It's literally Purdue and everyone else. There are so many teams that got 7-5, 8-5 records, but I think there's 3 teams that are guaranteed to be locked in. Purdue's obviously a lock. They're definitely going to make the tournament. They're the best team in the country. I definitely think Indiana's going to make the tournament. They just beat Purdue, which I am really impressed with, and I even think they have a chance to make a deep run. And I think as well a team like Rutgers, like you said, who the heck could have expected this coming? but they also beat Purdue at Purdue. That's not easy to do at all. And I think there's two other teams that can make it. Iowa, they got Chris Murray, their star player. He averages 20 points per game. That's one of the best in the country. And I think Maryland can also make the tournament. Wow. They kept it close with teams like Purdue and even Tennessee. But I think a lot of teams from the Big Ten are going to make the tournament.
Absolutely, absolutely. Your take?
What I'll say is Purdue is a lock. We can all agree. And what makes Purdue so impressive to me is I am big on road wins in college basketball because it is so hard to win on the road, especially with the college atmosphere. Only them and Northwestern have winning records on the road in the Big Ten. I find, and out of all the other teams, and I think Indiana is going to make it to the March Madness because they just got a big-time win, and that was very impressive because they got plethora of players. But outside of them, like Michigan to me has been such a disappointment. You didn't expect them to be as bad, I don't think. Usually they're always one of the best teams in college basketball. But as of right now, it's just Indiana and Purdue for me.
Yeah, no, that was a good take. After UConn started the season as arguably one of the best teams in the country, they have been severely humbled in conference play. Marquette and Xavier have separated themselves from the pack, but Creighton and Providence aren't far behind. Dylan, who is going to win the Big East, and who should we look out for in March Madness?
In terms of winning the Big East, I think the most dangerous team right now is Xavier. They are really deadly. I mean, they lead the country in assists per game. They have 21 assists per game, which is pretty good. They have over 5 players that average above 10 points a game and 3 players that average above 15. And their head coach, Sean Miller, he was a former Arizona coach. And I think he should be candidate for Coach of the Year for college basketball because he's done a heck of a job turning this team around. They've beaten teams like UConn twice. They beat Marquette. They almost beat Indiana. They almost lost by 2. And they almost beat Gonzaga back in the beginning of the year when they were really good. Obviously, they're not so good now. But I think Xavier will win. But also who I think will make the tournament and I think can be dangerous is Marquette. I think they're another dangerous team that can make the tournament. As well, they have 5 players who average above 10 per game. They also have really good ball movement. And a player named Tyler Kolek, he's their forward. He has 7 assists, which is 3rd in the country. So that's another team that has great ball movement as well.
Absolutely. It's a very interesting conversation. Do you have an opinion on it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to write UConn out yet. They're now winning 3 straight games. They just beat Marquette, and that's a big-time win right now for them. Creighton is now winners of 6 in a row, so right now they are the hottest team in the Big East. But I like Providence because they are undefeated at home. That's important, and 5 of their last 8 are at home. Right. So and a lot of their home games are against the tougher teams, so they'll play a little bit of a weaker schedule on the road to end the regular season. But my thing with Xavier, every year they're really good, but then once it gets to March, it just isn't the same with that team.
Right.
For some reason. But if I had to go, I think Providence is going to come up and somehow win the Big East this year.
I mean, March Madness is coming sooner than we think, so we will find out very, very soon. With the NBA trade deadline right around the corner, a lot of conversation has been going on about that, as well as some notable names being left out of the All-Star break. We'll have our reaction to that and more on the other side of this break. The NBA trade deadline is right around the corner, and one big name has already been moved. The Brooklyn Nets have traded Kyrie Irving to the Dallas Mavericks in exchange for Spencer Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith. Bill, this was an interesting development the entire way. Who do you think won this trade?
Dallas. I don't think it's particularly close. I mean, right now Dallas is a top 3 backcourt in basketball right now, no matter how you want to look at it. The good thing with Kyrie is he can be a spot shooter. We've seen it work with LeBron very well. And Luka and LeBron play a very similar type of way offensively. Now, LeBron's a way better defensive player than Luka. I don't think anybody disagrees. But when it comes to the offensive side of the basketball, the Mavericks now have a 2. And that is what they've desperately needed over the last 2 years. But I want to talk about the Nets. Was that big 3 not the biggest disappointment in the NBA, like, ever?
It was, but you got to look at it in terms of personality. I mean, the intangibles going into that, they made, I think, everybody scratch their head a little bit like, can they get along? But to your point, huge disappointment. Could you agree?
Yeah, and clearly they didn't get along. at all. Kyrie, and there's a reason, Bill, that they traded Kyrie. He was a distraction to the team. These weird absences that the guy had, he can only play in road games. There was a reason they had to trade him. They had no choice. So I would say maybe Dallas would win the trade if they win a championship. And I'm not sure they can do that. They're kind of in a tough spot in a tough Western Conference. And I think the Nets in the future can get some good draft picks with that trade. And I just think overall they needed that distraction off their board, off their team.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I do agree with the Nets definitely needed to move off from him. There's no doubt about it. I think they should also think about losing Kevin Durant soon, because right now that organization is just, from the beginning of the year, with the firing of the head coach, with the whole thing with Kyrie. But guess we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing with Kyrie, there was a while where he was kind of looking for his own team, and I know he moved to the Celtics and he wanted to have his team. Like, this is Luka's team. So I think my biggest concern is, can they get along? Because that could be a deadly force. And
I'm not
what
sure.
he said. At least he was right about the earth being flat. Can we agree on that? Just kidding. Some notable names have been left out this year, or in this year's All-Star game in the NBA. De'Aaron Fox, James Harden, Pascal Siakam, Trae Young, and Anthony Edwards headlined those notable names. Your thoughts on that and what other players also got snubbed this year, Dylan?
Well, like those names you mentioned, it's ridiculous that any of them got snubbed. The biggest one to me is Siakam. He is literally the only reason why the Raptors are relevant. They're 25 and 30 right now. They would be so much worse if he wasn't on that team. He leads the league in the most minutes played. He averages 25 points per game. I just don't understand how you leave him out there. I would have honestly taken Julius Randle out, as controversial as that is, and put Siakam in because, like I said, he's just been carrying the Raptors. And another guy James Harden, his streak ended. What was it, 10 years in a row that guy made the All-Star game?
Yeah.
And he's still having good production, a little over 20 points per game. My guy who I think shouldn't be in over him is Drew Holiday. Why is he in the All-Star game over James freaking Harden?
Yeah. To me, when looking down at it, I completely agree. I actually have it on here. Harden should be over Drew Holiday as well. I mean, Harden controls the offense. He is and I know people are going to say Embiid is the number one, which is true. Yes. But who consistently brings the ball up the court? It's Harden, and the offense goes off of him. Same thing with Siakam. I think he should be over Randle as well because Randle's a 2 on the Knicks because right now Brunson's their guy. Siakam, like you said, is the reason the Raptors have any type of ability to be good. But De'Aaron Fox not getting in, Anthony Edwards not getting in. Like, to me, no offense, Jaren Jackson had 16 points per game. Good, but over some of these other guys in the West who didn't get it, to me, is ridiculous.
Absolutely. I don't even know how to feel about it at this point, but hopefully it should be a good game. All eyes are on LeBron James as he gets ever closer to becoming the all-time leading scorer in the NBA. That was until last night. He broke it. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is now in second place. So, Bill, this is always a fun argument. Does this make LeBron the GOAT if he isn't already?
Listen, LeBron is an incredible player, right? He has been doing it for 20 years. But he's not better than MJ. I'm sorry, all time, he's just not. And here's why. MJ has more MVPs, and he hasn't played as long as LeBron. MJ, even though he might have the most points all time, LeBron, MJ has the most points per game in NBA history.
Which is what matters.
Exactly. Per game is pretty important to me. Longevity that's definitely got to be put into factor, but at the end of the day, per game, every game basis, Michael's better. I'll keep it going. He never cracked in a big moment. LeBron against Dallas, like 8 points in Game 4 is inexcusable. 6-0 in the finals. I know everybody hates that argument, but it just has to be put in there. And there's two sides to play basketball. He's the better defender, and I don't think anybody's debating that either.
I think another thing with MJ, too, is the way he approaches the game compared to LeBron. No disrespect to LeBron. He takes it very seriously. But MJ had this obsession with winning to the point where he would be a jerk to his teammates just to motivate them to win. And I think him and Kobe probably stand alone in terms of the greatest mentalities in, athletic history, let alone basketball. And like I said, 6-0 is better than 4-6, right?
Exactly.
That's what wins the argument for me. Period. End of discussion. No disrespect to LeBron, but still MJ.
It's a close race. Now, The other argument that comes up, could LeBron survive in MJ's NBA and could MJ survive in LeBron's NBA? Which one was harder to play in?
Here's what I say. MJ has the most, again, average points per game in an era where he was able to literally get smacked every single play.
Sure.
Could you imagine how many points a game he'd score in this NBA? Could you imagine? LeBron in that era, I'm not saying that he'd be a bad player, but I don't think he'd be the same guy because of the rules. Again, back then, what's LeBron really good at? Crashing the paint, looking for a guy on the outside. Then the three-point is not the same how it is today. And I think MJ would have flourished in this era more than LeBron would have back in the 90s.
I think both would have flourished, honestly. I think both of them would be just as good, if not better. I mean, like I said with the mentality stuff, LeBron's got a great basketball IQ.
Sure.
I feel like if he played back then, he would have adjusted to how the NBA was played, and he'd still be the star we know today.
Yeah, two special players, no disrespect to either, but always a fun discussion. Now, let's switch gears. Looking at the important big game. Dylan, the Kansas City Chiefs are back in the big game, and the Philadelphia Eagles have had an unbelievable season. Dylan, who wins on Sunday and why?
Now look.
Looked at the wrong guy there, sorry.
No, you're all good. But the Chiefs, they're banged up. Mahomes, obviously, the ankle, everyone's questioning that. We don't even know if Kadarius Toney's going to play. We don't even know if Juju's going to play. Hartman's out. Snead's playing, but he just got concussed, so we don't even know about that. And I believe Kelsey's hurt too. I mean, their team is so banged up. And they still got some stars. They got Chris Jones on the defensive line. But the Eagles are stacked. I mean, my gosh. I'm not sure if anyone's hurt on that team. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts, to me the best O-line tangent in the league with Jason Kelsey. I think probably two of the best defense in the league with Gardner Johnson and Slay and Cox. I mean, they dismantled Brock Purdy. They were the ones that injured that arm. It was them. They were the reason why the Niners only scored 7 points, and they literally had no game plan.
What's your take?
I got the Eagles. And the reason I got the Eagles is because, I mean, they're just a better overall team. Now, Kansas City has a lot of really great players. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. He's been for the last few years. Travis Kelce, not only is he the best tight end, you can make the case he's the best receiving target in the sport. Chris Jones, when it comes to interior defensive linemen, I'm taking out Aaron Donald out of this discussion, but Chris Jones is the best interior defensive lineman, and he can play at any position on the line. But the Eagles, like you said, have the best offensive line in football. The Eagles have the best overall defensive line in football. They had 70 sacks this year, which is the third most in NFL history. When it comes to the offense, the Eagles run the ball pretty well, I would say. You know, with Jalen Hurts, with Miles Sanders, with the offensive line that they have. Kansas City this year against teams that run the ball pretty well, like the Raiders, the Titans, the 49ers, gave up 100 yards plus in each of those games and struggled pretty bad. Right. I think the Eagles early on are going to take shots, like deep, to see if Jalen's arm is feeling good because it looks a little bit banged up. But as the game goes on, I think they're going to go into that read option. They're going to run the ball. They're going to be physical, and they're going to eat up that clock and make Patrick Mahomes have to be special. And I think he can do it. But it's going to be tough against that Eagles D.
And before we get to your prediction, with everything I just said, you just said, I'm going bold here. Kansas City's pulling off the upset. I'm going score 27-20. Mahomes is carrying that team on the bad ankle. As stacked as the Eagles are, Chiefs got the best quarterback in the league.
That's true.
Now, do you agree with me, or do you?
I mean, that is an important factor, and I always say you can't really count out Mahomes in these moments. If they lose the game, I just don't think it's going to be on him. So that's my take first and foremost. But I do think the Eagles have this one as a shoo-in win. When you look at teams that are just so heavily favored to win the Super Bowl, from a fan prediction, 2007 Patriots, I would even argue the 2020 Chiefs, like they moved the ball down the field in special ways. The Bills were favored at the beginning of the season, but it was very square. You pass ball to a good receiver, you win big game. Look at what the Eagles are doing. Even like Jason Kelsey, as you mentioned, he's a center that's going to play fullback when you need him to. Did we see that play on the 49ers? He just loops around, he's blocking people. Yeah, like the defensive line, he said. Like, there's just things about the Eagles that I can't look at that and be like, elite quarterback play is going to outplay that, especially when your receiving core has broken down the way the Chiefs have.
Absolutely. And here's what I'll say with Kansas City. They have ways to beat the Eagles. Like, it's not like it's a one-sided landslide. But when it comes to Mahomes is going to have to be perfect, and that defense is going to have to show up. That's what's the bottom line. They're going to have to show up, and they got a lot of injuries on that back end.
I look at the Chiefs-Bucks Super Bowl and think this could be deja vu. Hopefully not. Hopefully high scoring, fun game to watch, but I say the Birds take
Either
it.
way, Mama Kelsey's healthy.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
happy.
Oh, yeah. We'll have more on Super Bowl 57 after the break, but first we toss it to Nicole Dalton with the latest in Millersville athletics after this short break. In the zone, we'll be right back.
Welcome back from winter break. I'm Nicole Dalton, and I've got a full recap from this past weekend in Ville sports. Ville Athletics has had a successful weekend for their basketball and baseball teams. Women's basketball had a 70-58 win against Bloomsburg this past Saturday and a 71-62 win against the Kutztown Bears, on the 6th giving them their 3rd and 4th wins in a row. Taylor Langen, for the first time in her career, was named the PSAC East Defensive Athlete of the Week and had a career high score of 32 points against the Golden Bears. Men's basketball had an equally successful weekend, winning 94-56 against Bloomsburg, and another win this past Monday, 89-59 against Kutztown. These wins make them second in the PSAC East with a record of 12-5. Matt Dade and Drew Stover had 12 points each, and Keith Mency, Day Waters, and Jaheim Easted had 11 points each. They are tied for second place with Lock Haven, who will travel to Ville this Wednesday. With the conference play heating up, these games are crucial for the PSAC East standings. The baseball team had success as they are off to a 2-0 start this season after a 9-3 win at Barton College. This is the first time the Marauders have started 2-0 since 2004. Good luck to all the Marauders as we continue throughout the winter season.
Welcome back to In the Zone. Now joining us is Travis Schuster. And guys, back to the Super Bowl. Dylan has given us his thoughts on the big game. Are we in agreement that the Chiefs have a chance, or do you have a different pick?
Well, let's just start. Dylan's wrong, okay? I don't, I'm not to say the Chiefs don't have a shot, but you look at the team that's clearly favored is the Eagles. But that's not to take away from the Chiefs. They have the experience, and that's one thing the Eagles don't have. Nick Sirianni hasn't been to the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts hasn't been to the Super Bowl. But Andy Reid's been to the Super Bowl, more than twice? He lost one, and then he finally won with the Chiefs. Mahomes has been to three. Andy Reid's been there 3 times, and Mahomes has been there twice. But let's just start with this. Nick Sirianni has something to prove. It's his revenge game against Andy Reid. We remember back in 2013 when Andy Reid was first hired as a coach of the Chiefs. He fired Nick Sirianni, who was their wide receivers coach at the time. And now Nick Sirianni, look where he's gotten in 10 years. He's gotten to the Super Bowl. He's gotten to that part where Andy Reid is. Where the Eagles are going to win this game is their defense. There's no denying that. They have the best pass rush win rate in the entire league, with 52% of the time. And they have 4 players who have over 12 sacks this year. You look at Javon Hargrave, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, and leading that pack is Hassan Reddick, a guy who Howie Roseman went out and signed in the offseason. He has 21 sacks this year. That's including the regular season and the playoffs. Just dominant.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it seems like when Jalen Hurts is playing for the Eagles, he's virtually unstoppable unless Taylor Heineke and the Commanders come out to the field. You know what I mean? So I just think as far as statistics go and everything that you shared,
But
all signs point to the Eagles.
one thing, where the Chiefs got to really watch it, here's where the Chiefs can kind of negate the Eagles' chances. You got to keep the Eagles out of the red zone, because the Eagles have the 3rd best red zone offense in the league, scoring a touchdown 67.8% of the time they're in the red zone. But contrast that to the Chiefs' red zone defense, they allow opposing teams to score 67% of the time opposing teams reach the red zone. So if the Chiefs want to win, you got to keep the Eagles out of the red zone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, stats like that you just don't find every year, even with teams in the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
So I'm excited. I just hope it's a good game.
It's going to be a close one. My prediction, I'm going to go 34-37 Eagles by a field goal.
I love it. Oh, so for every other team in the NFL, the offseason has begun. The theme this offseason has undoubtedly been the quarterback position, Derek Carr will be on the move. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens are still in a contract standoff. Jimmy G is going to leave the Bay Area. There's also some uncertainty about Aaron Rodgers as well. Bill, how do you see the quarterback movement playing out this offseason?
Well, I want to start off with Aaron Rodgers is not leaving Green Bay if he retires. If he retires, then he'll be done. But I think he stays in Green Bay if he keeps playing. Why would you leave the NFC right now? The NFC right now, outside of Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in the NFC. Right now, you could make the case if Rodgers retired today that Dak Prescott's the second best quarterback in the conference.
Wow.
So if you're Aaron Rodgers, why would you leave? And if he were to leave, you know he'd go to the AFC, and you are what, maybe top 5? Because the conference is stacked with quarterbacks. When you go to Lamar Jackson, to me, I just don't see him staying with Baltimore. And the reason I don't see him staying is because they would have signed him prior to the season starting, right? I think you want to get that out of the way. I don't think he'll play on the franchise tag because I think he never in his career has he started a full season. So, and he's probably not going to take a franchise tag, especially if he gets hurt again.
Right.
So he's going to want that long-term deal. According to reports, they're $100 million off. If there's one team that has the money to do it, and I think he goes to the NFC, goes to a weak division like the South. I think Lamar goes to the Falcons. I think he fits that offense with Arthur Smith at the head coach.
Now, sorry to cut you off, but do you think it'll be a wise move for the Falcons to sign him to a massive contract considering he hasn't played a full season?
Yes, because there is not if you have Lamar in the NFC South, who's the second best as of right now?
Right.
Is it Jameis Winston? Is it Sam Darnold? Kyle Trask? But to come back with that, I think the Saints will probably go after Derek Carr. It sounds like that the Raiders are going to cut him because everyone knows that Derek Carr is not going to stay with the Raiders next year, and nobody wants to trade assets. So he'll probably be a free agent. I think he'll go to the Saints because right now the Saints, they're a veteran team. I think they should come in with a veteran quarterback. Jimmy G, I think he goes to the Jets. I think he'll be able to handle the media. I think the Jets right now, they just need to get a game manager in. Don't make mistakes like Zach Wilson, and hopefully it works out for them. And the teams like the Raiders and the Bucs that will lose out on this, I think Baker Mayfield will go to one of those two teams.
That's cool. Very good takes. Where do you have those three guys going?
Well, I kind of got Garoppolo going to the Colts.
Okay.
I think the Colts have a history. We all know they have a history going after aging quarterbacks who are kind of past their prime.
Right.
And I just don't think – I think Garoppolo would have a better shot of winning with the Colts other than not the he will have a better shot with the Colts than the Jets.
Yeah.
Even though we saw Jets, they can win when you put a competent quarterback in, or they have at least a better shot at winning. But as far as Baker Mayfield, I mean, Mayfield could also land anywhere. I see Mayfield going to the Jets more than Garoppolo.
Only reason I have him going to the Jets, Robert Saleh, former DC for the Niners.
Right.
That's, I think, a big component.
Already some chemistry there. It's going to be exciting nonetheless. This could be the biggest offseason, even bigger than last year. Speaking of, it's happened again, for now. Tom Brady has announced his retirement again, and guys, it feels like anything we say about his retirement this year in regards to an end of an era and the GOAT and all that is just recycled from last year. Do you really believe TB12 this time, or is he destined for another comeback from retirement?
I am 99.9% sure he's done. You could tell that took a lot out of him to make that short 1-minute video on the beach. To me, this last year, just everything that could go wrong went wrong for Tom Brady when usually nothing around him goes wrong off the field. I think he wanted to retire last year, but because people jumped the gun on him retiring, I think that hurt. I think that really made him upset. So I think he came back just to be in spite of those people. And he's come back, and, I mean, Tampa Bay, not the best year. It's first losing season as a starting quarterback. The one team I did think he might have went to was the Niners because I think, imagine him with the Niners, right? That would have been
Seriously,
ridiculous.
and going back to his hometown, the Bay Area, it would just feel like the perfect ending to this long
Exactly. And the
legacy.
reason I say that also is the Niners right now, what's their biggest issue? They don't have a quarterback that can stay healthy. They had 4 quarterbacks go out this year.
Right.
And Brady is the definition of consistently healthy every year. But I do believe he's done, and he should take a year off.
Is that your take?
Yeah, I believe he's 99% sure he's done. I mean, the word retirement for him, I don't think has any meaning. I think he should have retired when he was going to retire last year, just given the Buccaneers had a new coach this season, and their offense looked horrible. I mean, Tom Brady was not the same Tom Brady we all know that he is.
Right. We'll know in a few weeks probably if it's truly the end of an era or if we're going to see another year of TB12. And that will do it for this week's edition of In the Zone. For Dylan Shields, Bill Cullen, Travis Schuster, and Nicole Dalton, I'm Liam Crane. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back next week right here on In the Zone.